We made USAA insurance to help you save. Take advantage of discounts when you cover your home and your ride. Discover how we're helping members save at USAA.com/bundle. USAA. Restrictions apply.
December 7th, 1942. The National Broadcasting Company today presents a special memorial broadcast of Eyes Aloft.
America, Eyes Aloft. America, Eyes Aloft. America, December the 7th. America, remember Pearl Harbor. America, 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 America.
Army Flash. 1, bi-motor, low, scene, 15 Lucy 4, overhead, east.
Flying along, watching the skies, watching for planes flying the lanes up above.
Eyes Aloft, the 4th Fighter Command of the United States Army Air Forces, in cooperation with West Coast radio stations, presents this special December 7th program, paying tribute to America's war dead, honoring all of America's fighting men, and celebrating the first year of action of the 150,000 volunteer civilians of the Aircraft Warning Service.
Eyes aloft, night and day, we'll help protect the USA.
This is Ken Carpenter speaking. A gala program tonight. William E. Kepner, Commanding General of the 4th Fighter Command, has flown to Hollywood to be with us. Also, you will hear from high-ranking officers of the Anti-Aircraft Artillery and Army Air Corps. We will switch controls to an observation post, to a filter center, and an anti-aircraft target range. Gordon Jenkins and the Hollywood Choir have special musical presentations. And here now is your Eyes Aloft narrator, Gene Whitman.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today, December 7th, 1942, America has been at war 1 year. But not only men in uniform fight this war. There is also a vast army of civilian volunteers who carry on the fight here at home. The Aircraft Warning Service. How many of you can look back and recall how it all started? Well, listen. In the summer of 1941, the 4th Fighter Command of the United States Army Air Forces planned a coast-wide, border-to-border practice maneuver. For the first time in American military history, civilians were to become participants in the war games. Quietly, swiftly, the Army went at the gigantic task of organizing civilian forces. In the Pacific Northwest, Major Richard Colgren assumed the tremendous task of organizing the Aircraft Warning Service. In the southern area, Major John C. Gray tackled the monumental job. In July of 1941, Major Gray went to Sacramento to talk with Dick Graves, then head of the State Defense Council.
Well, there, Mr. Graves, I've told you the Army story.
What a job you have ahead of you, Major Gray.
I need help. In particular, I need your help.
All right. What can I do?
I'd like your office to contact every one of your county defense councils.
Okay. And do what, sir?
I want the name of some outstanding citizens in each county.
You're after leaders.
Absolutely. I select one man from each county as the organizer of the Ground Observation Corps.
And what will that man do?
It'll be his responsibility to work with the Army. We must select locations for observation posts, pick up area supervisors, and we have to work fast.
For 5 intense months, the 4th Fighter Command worked with local civic leaders. The Ground Observer Corps was rapidly organized. It was a tightly formed system and intersystem of thousands of observation posts, filter centers, information centers. This Ground Observer Corps would, when the time came, alert Army aircraft, searchlight batteries, anti-aircraft artillery, barrage balloon units, would set into immediate motion a vast and intricate maze of military defense. At last, all was ready to test. The system was to be tried December 11th, the war games to be started, but... On December 7th, the tyrant nation started a different sort of war game, a real war game. Sunday morning, December 7th, 1941. The Hawaiian Islands, Honolulu, the dastardly bombing of Pearl Harbor by the Japanese. Listen to this eyewitness account of the bombing of Honolulu. Major Ernest Keating, now commanding officer of a fighter group in the state of Washington, was in Hawaii last December 7th.
Everything was peaceful and quiet at Wheeler Field at 7:50 on the morning of last December 7th. A few moments later, I heard an airplane in a dive, and it made a noise like a United States Navy dive bomber. At the end of the dive, I heard an explosion, and at that time, I thought the pilot had failed to pull out of his dive. Before I could reach a window, I heard many explosions in rapid succession. Then I realized somebody was bombing the devil out of the place. But I thought that the Navy had a bombing range nearby and was merely getting in some target practice. However, when I rushed outside, I saw a column of dense black smoke coming from a place on our flying field. I then surmised that one of the planes did fly into the ground, and that what I saw was the smoke from his burning plane. At this point, the enemy swooped down and began to strafe Wheeler Field with machine gun and cannon fire. When I heard the machine guns, I at last knew we were being attacked, but wasn't quite sure who was doing it. Just then I saw several dive bombers north of the hangars and recognized them as Japanese. The enemy machine gunned Wheeler Field for about 25 minutes. This was the longest 25 minutes I have ever spent. It would have been suicide to run out on the field to try to reach any of our planes. 2 or 3 hangars was an inferno of flames. Planes were burning on the field. Ammunition dumps were exploding all about us. Then the Japs left. I ran and helped carry wounded men from a barracks to the hospital. Then the Japs came back. This time I could see them bombing Pearl Harbor several miles away. I saw a great column of smoke rise. It later proved to be from the sinking Arizona. No man or woman who was in Hawaii last December 7th will ever forget that horrible surprise.
At home on that sunny Sunday morning, here in a trusting, believing America, people went about their way as usual. Those who weren't at church perhaps were relaxing in front rooms of homes. Sunday papers scattered about, children reading funnies spread out on the floor, wives in the kitchen contemplating the Sunday dinner menu.
Daddy, Bill won't let me have the part with the funnies. He's just sitting on it.
Matthew, Billy. Come on, give your sister the part with Blondie.
Aw, here, sissy.
Henry?
Yes, dear.
What are you doing?
Reading.
Now, you promised to clean the garage today.
Oh, well, I said some Sunday, not this Sunday. I'm going to see what's on the radio for a minute. Yeah.
Now, Henry, if you don't turn off that radio and go clean the garage, I won't cook dinner.
Oh, now, Martha. Hey, do you hear that? Sky Lombardo, your favorite orchestra.
Henry, you're just stalling.
Oh, well.
We interrupt this program for a news flash from Washington, D.C. 1 moment, please.
What goes, Dad?
Oh, wait, listen.
At 7:55 a.m. Hawaiian time this morning, Japanese planes dropped bombs on Pearl Harbor Naval Base, strafed Wheeler Field.
What?
Many civilians, as well as Army and Navy personnel, are believed dead.
Oh, Henry.
The amount of destruction is unknown.
Lord, Martha.
Keep tuned to this station for our latest news developments.
Turn it off.
Yeah. Never have trusted those dirty Japs.
That'll mean war for us, won't it, Henry?
Yeah, that'll mean war for us, Martha.
Oh.
Oh, now, wait a minute. Don't get jittery. Probably just Jack Miller calling to see if I've heard the news yet.
Will Daddy have to go to war, Mother?
Oh, I don't know. Not for a while. Now, don't worry, Betty.
Yeah? Yeah, this is Henry Smith. Who? Oh, yeah. Now? Me?
What is it, Henry?
Well, I'm glad to. Yeah, I'll put on my coat and be right up. Yeah, goodbye.
Well, where are you going, Henry?
I don't want Daddy to leave.
Now, Martha, now look, kids. Now, this is no time for nerves. That was Phil Lockhart. He's chief observer at our post.
But where were you going?
He's calling observers to man the post. Say, it's 4 days ahead of December 11th. The Aircraft Warning Service is going right into operation anyway.
This won't be play war as you all had planned it.
No, Martha, no. It's the real McCoy.
Yes.
We'll be watching for real enemy planes now. I got to get my leather jacket.
You don't know when you'll be back?
I don't know. Hey, gosh, Martha, just think.
What?
The honor I've just had tossed at me. Why, I'll be standing guard on the first doggone watch. Hey, gee, kid, you ought to be proud of your old man now.
Up and down the Pacific coast, in every city, town, village, and hamlet, civilian men and women observers and filter center workers were called to duty that Sunday morning. The Army supervised the job. The people of the country, volunteers all, were working in civilian clothes as part of the United States Army. Though they wore no uniforms of khaki, they knew on that ominous Sunday that they, too, were members of America's fighting forces.
At this moment, we switch controls to a typical observation post. Located on northern California's Monterey Peninsula, the new little post building sits high on a rocky promontory that juts out into the turbulent waters of the Pacific Ocean. Calling Monterey Peninsula.
This is Captain E.G. Morrison, South Coast Ground Observer Officer, speaking to you from the sea cliffs in front of the observation post. With me are several loyal observers. First, I want you to meet 82-year-old hale and hearty Finn Frolick.
Finn's coming north by west tonight.
And strong. Weren't you an old-time Norwegian sea captain before you retired, Mr. Frolick?
That I was, Captain. I've paced the bridge many a night, watching the sea. Now I am pacing on these cliffs, watching for the enemy.
Well, I know they'll never get by you, Mr. Frolick. Mr. Frolick has been an observer at this post since last December 7th. And here's Mrs. Karis Weston, another of the post observers.
Can't we take the microphone inside now, Captain Morrison? I think people would enjoy meeting our chief observer, Whit Wellman, and his wife, Olga. They're on duty tonight, you know.
Well, we'll go on in. But first I want to point out about this stone wall around the shack here. Didn't you have something to do with building that wall, Mrs. Weston?
Yes, Captain Morrison.
Was it your idea?
I began it. The other observers helped finish it.
Well, this is certainly a splendid post now. The way all you people have worked and built it up from nothing. Let's go on in now. Will you open the door for me, Mr. Frolick?
Yes, sir.
Warm in here. I think we all spent enough time outside keeping this post going when we didn't have a shack.
Oh, Mr. Wellman, you're chief observer at this post.
That's right. Of course, my wife here did a large amount of the early work in securing observers.
That was a long time ago. It was just a year ago today that we first started calling observers to come and stand duty on this post.
There wasn't any building here then, was there?
No, from Pearl Harbor to January 3rd, observers just stood up here, exposed to the wind and the rain.
That was pretty disagreeable work.
Yes, but we knew it had to be done. On January 3rd, we bought a bag, and we brought it up here.
Oh, that was a sleeping bag?
Yes, it was the one way to keep warm.
Well, that is fairly warm anyway.
Well, how far were you from the telephone?
Oh, we had to run about 200 feet at the phone at the home down below.
We couldn't run exactly. We'd stumble along the rocky path that leads down the hill.
Then you'd have to climb up all over again and make another flash call.
It was really pioneering in those days.
Well, this post, like so many others in the Pacific Coast, have come a long way in a year.
Well, Charlie Shepard, our county director, explained that if we ever had to have any building or anything else, we would have to arrange for them ourselves, and we did. We raised enough to build this fine little shack. It's well insulated, warm, and it helps us to keep a full quota of observers at all times.
Some one of us from this community will be right here on guard as long as we're needed.
And that seems to be the spirit of the Ground Observer Corps workers, to stay in the job as long as they're needed. This is Captain Morrison returning the program to Hollywood.
The 4th Fighter Command's Aircraft Warning Service is composed of two major units, the Ground Observer Corps and the Filter Center workers. Filter centers are located in many of the key cities along the Pacific Coast. We now take you to Seattle, Washington, where you will hear from Mrs. Negley England, Director of Civilian Components, and Signal Officer Colonel Richard Carlgren.
We've come a long way since our first meeting 16 months ago, haven't we, Mrs. England?
Yes, indeed, Colonel Carl.